Hi everybody, welcome back to Prose and Pour. My name is Ashley. I'm excited to welcome you if you are new to my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. But without further ado, let's get into what we are going to discuss today, which is my June reading wrap-up video. So I do have my notes here because without notes, I would be all over the place. But I picked up 15 books for the month of June. I ended up reading 13. 2 of them were DNFs. So we will get to those a little bit later. But I had overall 2 3-star review reads. I had 8 4-star reviews and then 2 books that were 5-star. And we'll save those for later. But I am getting to these a little bit late, so we're not really going to dive too much into my July TBR, but I will probably do another video on that. So we are going to start with my 3-star reads. So first off, we have Final Target by Nora Roberts. I am a huge Nora Roberts fan, and this particular book just came out, so it is a new release. I think it maybe came out maybe a couple of weeks ago. So it is suspenseful, psychological, romantic suspense, character driven. I feel like it was maybe 50-50 suspense and romance, which is fine. But basically in this particular book, we are following Arden Bowie. She is a debut author. Her life is turned upside down when an obsessive fan comes into a book signing. I think he comes in twice, and he basically claims that he is interested in writing his own book, and then at some point she begins to care for her safety. She has to overcome that experience that she had with an obsessive fan, right? So I have some thoughts about this particular book, and again, I am a huge Nora Roberts fan. So my thoughts on this book were maybe that it wasn't too original, and I will say that out of all the books I had just finished before I read Final Target, I had just finished reading Remember When, which is book 17 and a half from the In Depth series, and I thought it was fantastic. So I think it was very similar, that or maybe she has a similar writing style, but there was just too many things that were very similar. So for me, this book kind of lacked a little bit of originality, and I did finish reading it, but I ultimately ended up giving it only 3 stars. The next book that I read, and I don't want to say that this is the next book I read, because again, I didn't really put these in any particular order, but I did put them in order as far as this is a 3-star read as well. The Midnight Train by Haig. So I know that we had a lot of really high hopes and expectations for this book, and I don't want to take that away if you may have loved this book. But for me, it was a 3-star read. I read The Midnight Library, I think 2 years ago, and I'm thinking that when I read it, I maybe only had given it 3 or 4 stars, but Lofton Dew, after it sat with me for a while, I probably gave it another star. So I either given it 3 and then moved it to 4, or 4 and then moved it to 5, one of the two. And in this book, we're following Wilbur and the story of him and Maggie, his wife. So the train takes Wilbur to Venice around the time of his honeymoon. I really don't want to say too much about it because there aren't a ton of details in the description, so I don't want to really add any additional details that you can't already get in the description. But ultimately, Wilbur has an opportunity to go back and live his life differently. My thoughts on this book were, I love the Midnight Library universe, and I feel like even if Haig were to write another book in the Midnight universe, the Midnight Airplane, the Midnight Shopping Mall, the Midnight Grocery Store, I still feel like I would read it. I just don't think Wilbur was very much a likable character. So I also thought the narrator, because I listen to a lot of books while I read them in either a print or e-reader copy. And as an audiobook listener, I feel like the narrator that narrated this book was maybe a little young, or maybe it was just total mismatch for Wilbur's character. So that maybe took a little bit away from me as well. So keep that in mind. Now we're going to get into my 4-star reads. So the first book that I have for 4 stars was this book, Made Me Think of You by Libby Page. So a lot of people have read this book, love this book. You've probably heard it making its round, but it is a good book to get you maybe out of a reading slump. It has both happy and sad vibes to it. So I would almost want to call it even a light read just because of how it's written. And you may go into this book thinking it's going to be emotionally heavy. I really don't think that it was very emotionally heavy, so don't think that it's going to put you in a down mood or anything like that. I highly recommend it. It was very much an easy read. So in this book, we are following Tilly, right? And we've got Tilly's husband who had passed away, and he leaves a gift for her at the library, which is a book every month to be given to her no sooner, no later, to help her redevelop her love of reading after his passing, which I think is so sweet. And each book has a story behind it. Some are books that you probably wouldn't even expect, and some of them are really cute. Just an example could be like gardening or something. And I don't even think there was a gardening, but just an example, because maybe that was something that was relevant to them. So I thought it was cute. It wasn't heavy at all, so if you are in a reading slump, this would be a good one to get you out. And then there was one line from the book that I absolutely loved. I have a note here because I thought it was so sweet. Basically, and as we know, this book has some mentions about grief, but there was a line that said, "I thought I had to bury my sadness, but I was wrong. My grief is un regalo, a gift. It is our memories." I don't know if I said that right, but either way, I thought that was genius. So it was a really good book. I highly recommend it. And again, I give it 4 stars. So this next book is It's Not Her by Mary Kubica. It is a suspenseful, entertaining, and twisty book. So this book is told from, I believe we have 2 point of views. We have Courtney and we have Reese. So we have this family that is visiting a cabin in Wisconsin. I love books with a cabin. And then in the book, Courtney discovers her brother and sister-in-law dead, and this is not a spoiler. We have these 2 point of views. Courtney is the sister of the male victim. It's her brother. And then Reese, she is the daughter of the 2 victims. So we're trying to determine what happened to the 2 victims, but also Reese, if she was involved. So that's kind of cool. And in the book, we're trying to figure out, where is Reese? Was she part of this crime? My thoughts on the book, it was very interesting. It hooked me right away from just the very beginning, just because the crime takes place early on in the book. There's so many different directions the book could go, I feel like. And even though I didn't necessarily love the characters, which is unusual for me, I'm typically very character driven. If I don't like the characters, then it's hard for me to like a book. But this one was fine. So I really enjoyed it. At the end, plot twist, I didn't see it coming. No surprise there. I never see those coming. But I give it 4 stars. I thought it was really good. People say it might be her best book yet. So I would highly recommend picking this up if you maybe want an introduction to thrillers. Good book. So this next book, I will say I may get a little bit of heat from this. I gave it 4 stars, not 5, but it was The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. So the vibe for this book is quiet, emotional, reflective, character focus. For me, I think I just didn't love our main character. I thought the people that she interacted with were a lot more exciting than she was. And her name is Sybil Van Antwerp. She's 73. She is a retired lawyer. She spends much of her life writing letters literally to everyone. Friends, family, her brother, neighbors, university administrators, people from her past, a customer service guy, anybody you can imagine. So people do say that this is a book that's better read in the print version, because there's a lot of email versus mail and everything has a subject line. So it can get confusing if you're just listening, right? You want to maybe be able to see and distinguish the difference. And I will be honest, I did not know much about this book before I started reading it, other than the fact that it had really good reviews. At first, when I opened the book, I was like, is she literally just going to be writing letters throughout this entire book? And yes, she is. But the audio accompaniment with a print or a Kindle version, I think would be great, because I think there was like full narration, if I recall, like full cast. They had different voices, and so you could really picture these interactions as they were happening. So I definitely love having the audio accompaniment. And I think it made the book a little bit better just because I really didn't like our main character very much. So again, I give that 4 stars. The next book I gave 4 stars, Good Spirits by B.K. Borison. So this was just a nice little light read to pick up. Very holiday, happy, magical, maybe a little bit reflective. It was really a cute book. So in this book, we follow Harriet. She lives in a small town. So if you like small town romance, this might be your thing. She's somewhat of an outcast from her family because she chose a different path. I think they all wanted her to become a lawyer at their family law firm, if I recall. But instead, she decided to open up this antique shop in this small town. So, and I think it was maybe something she acquired from her grandma. I can't remember. But Harriet comes home. She finds a stranger in her house. And then it kind of goes into a Christmas Carol type story where you've got this ghost, and it's really cute. I don't want to say too much other than that, but basically it's just a very nice light read. I was immediately hooked by this book. I do love a good cozy holiday vibe, and this is like a Christmas Carol book, but I really didn't care. I just wanted something light, and I was so lucky that my friend had recommended this book to me. And then listening to the audiobook, I know that I remember laughing out loud quite a few times. So definitely pick it up if you're looking for just something super light. And of course, he's a ghost, and yes, it's a rom-com book, so you can guess on your own how it's going to end. This next book I gave 4 stars was Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Faeries. And now this is book 1 of a 4-part series. I am typically not someone who likes to read series. I don't know if it's committing to a book or I just like the simplification of standalone books. But this book had a very magical, happy, adventurous, scholarly type vibe. I will say for me, I'm lucky that I had this as an ARC on Kindle. I think it's been out for a little while, but I still somehow got it as an ARC. Because when it comes to particular words or anything like that, and in this book, they had a lot of those footnotes and stuff. So in this book, we start out immediately, just dive straight into the adventure. Our main character, Emily Wilde, is a Cambridge professor. She arrives in a remote village with her dog Shadow. She's very meticulous. She has always preferred the company of her dog and her work to other people. And then while she's in this far northern village, she finds herself dealing with her academic rival, Wendell Bamblebee. So I think that's such a cute name. She takes her work extremely serious, and then townsfolk people find her very peculiar. And then the book continues from there, as you can imagine, and then it falls into a 4-book, I think it's a 4-book series. I might actually keep with this series, but it is definitely helpful to have audio and Kindle accompaniment, especially I will get distracted if I don't know how to pronounce a word. So it's good for me to have auditory help when it comes to that. That is one of the perks with audio. My next read 4-star review book this might surprise a lot of people because I don't think it had the best reviews on Goodreads, but it was the Unsinkable Greta James. I think it's by Jennifer E. Smith. Anyways, I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was emotional, heartfelt, character-driven, hopeful, uplifting. I think maybe what drew me in is we have this character, Greta. She is an indie musician, and then she ends up embarking on this Alaskan cruise. And anything with Alaska, I'm in. And then Greta is performing live on stage, and then she experiences this traumatic event, death of her mom. And again, that is not a spoiler. That's mentioned in the little front of the book here. And yes, it is by Jennifer Smith. So she's on stage performing, I think, and then finds out that her mom has suddenly passed away. And she's basically humiliated, but her family convinces her to go on this cruise that was intended to be for her mom. And her dad's a little bit bitter, stubborn. She doesn't have a great relationship with him and hasn't since she was a kid, and basically just doesn't like the path she chose. So she discovers these new friendships, possibilities for her future. So there's a little bit of healing and things like that. I actually really have to say that I like this book a lot. I was kind of surprised that it had lower reviews than I expected, and I actually liked her from the beginning. And then I liked everyone she met on her journey. So I thought it was a really good book. What stood out to me most, I think, was the relationship that Greta had with her dad. I feel like it's a relationship that a lot of people can relate to. I was really rooting for them the whole time as well. And then I just overall thought it was such a good book. I would read it again. I would absolutely recommend it at least once. But it was a fabulous book. This next book I actually have it right here. Listen for the Lie. And this book is fantastic. I do recommend it, and I think many people will also recommend it to you as an audiobook, just because when there's podcasts involved, it's always going to be better. Your reading experience, your listening experience will always be better. When audio, I read along while I listened, as I always do. But basically in this book, we have this mystery. We are following Lucy. She's a woman who returns to her hometown years after being found covered in her best friend's blood. She has no memory of what happened. And then everyone thinks she got away with murder. And then there's this true crime podcast host. I think his name is Ben. I think it's Ben. He decides to reopen the case, draw attention to it, figure out who murdered this woman, Savvy. I think her name is Savvy. I think that's her nickname. And then Lucy is forced to confront her past and then figure out whether she might even be the killer. So as you can imagine, this can go 10 different ways. This is a really good book. It's very light for thriller mystery. I kind of found myself laughing at different parts of the book. I'm not sure what that says about me, but I thought it was really good. So the mystery definitely kept me engaged from the beginning to the end. And then, of course, if you're an audiobook listener, I highly recommend this one. I think you could devour it pretty quickly. It's a great book. So 4 stars for Listen for the Lie. So this next book I have here is Remember When by Nora Roberts and J.D. Robb. So those are both the same person, but J.D. Robb is the pen name for Nora Roberts for her In Death series, which I think has 67 books now in it. And I think this book is maybe book 17.5, but you've got the first half of the book, which I feel like is one story or one book. And then I feel like the second half, even though it is related, I feel like it's also closely tied to the first part of the book. But you can definitely start with this book, or I think this is the first Eve Dallas novel. So this is book 1 of the In Death series. So I actually have it, but someone told me to read this one first, and then I will be reading this next, trying to catch up 66 more books. Now we are going to jump into my 5-star reads. So excited. The first 5-star read I have is The Lion Women of Tehran. So this book is both emotional and I guess I want to say heavy, character-driven, historical. It's definitely a little bit more heavy than This Book Made Me Think of You by Libby Page, but it was fantastic. I couldn't think of any reason to fault it, so I immediately gave it 5 stars. I've been a little bit more generous in my reviews lately. If I can't think of anything I disliked, I'm just going to go ahead and probably give it a 5 stars. In this book, we have basically 2 characters that we're following, both from different classes. So it is a lifelong friendship from a very young age to adulthood, right, of these 2 friends from 2 different backgrounds, different classes. And one ultimately ends up moving to the United States. The other one stays back home, but this relationship spans over decades. So it's a story about friendship, identity, family, courage, and the sacrifices people make in pursuit of freedom. So it was a really good book. I loved it. Couldn't put it down. I think I read it maybe in one sitting. So I couldn't fault any of it. And then I couldn't get over the format of this book. We open up in present day briefly, and then quickly it takes us back in time, and then it slowly catches us up to where we started. So I think it's so well done. And one thing I will mention is, and I love audiobook, is there are going to be, I think it's Persian words in here that it helps if you're an audio listener and you're distracted very easily like me, if you can hear the pronunciation. If I'm reading a book and I don't hear or know how to pronounce a word, it really distracts me. So I liked it because I kind of learned a couple of Persian words. And so I thought that was really exciting. But highly recommend this book. And you probably already know by now that a lot of people love that book. And then last but not least, technically I finished this 2 days ago in July, but I started it in June, so I'm going to count it. But Tremaine was phenomenal. I thought this was a great book. I'm probably going to end up reading it again, and I'm not usually a rereader, but I would love to read this book again. Oh, and then look at this pretty, I think that is so pretty. I was like, I don't know if I could get rid of this book ever. But in case you've never heard about this book, it's basically a Cinderella getting the Maleficent treatment in a darkly fairy tale kind of atmospheric vibe book, right? But so we have Lady Tremaine, and she is basically evil stepmother, but not really evil at all. 3 themes of motherhood we have in this book. We've got survival, sacrifice, impossible choices. She's really just looking out for the best for her kids, but has to make decisions of at what cost, right, throughout this book. So really can see a few elements of Cinderella in this book, but it wasn't really making me think about that book at all, or that movie, or anything other than a couple of elements, right? I will say that if you love, they're beautifully written, where the prose is almost poetic, the imagery is very vivid, you've got quiet introspection. This one is like a dream for you. You'd want to read it slowly just because every page has pretty much a line worth remembering. So it is marketed as a Cinderella retelling, but again, that's really not what stayed with me at all. and I would highly recommend it. I thought the book was great. So yeah, check this one out. And the audiobook I thought was fantastic as well. That pretty much sums up my June reading wrap up. I know I kind of did everything super quickly. I am probably not going to do a July TBR video. I pretty much already picked my books because I decided to do this America 250th Reading Challenge. And I think I might go ahead and extend that through the entire summer because I put 12 books on there and I might have just overwhelmed myself. So there's still other books that I want to read just because it is summer. So I will be sure to update you, but you know which books of these are your favorite. And again, I hope you decide to stick around. Please like and subscribe, and we will see you next time. Bye.